transitioning over, but we'll see. And it was like, we are. Okay, and now we are live.
Great.
Excellent. Well, I want to thank everybody for joining us today on Parenting Accurately. I am very, very excited to have our special guest here, as promised, Diana Bigham, who is a licensed marriage and family therapist. Parenting Accurately, if you're new here, if you're just joining us for the first time, I just want to take a moment and welcome you and thank you for tuning in. I believe that just by spending a few minutes with us today, you're going to walk away from the meeting feeling empowered, feeling educated, and better equipped to be able to deal with life's challenges as parents. We all know that parenting is one of the most challenging things that we can go through in life, especially when our kids reach the preteen and teenage age. They go through a lot of changes. There's a lot of things developing with them emotionally and their personalities. I don't know about you, but in my experience, most teenagers suddenly know everything. So what do we do with that? So I'm thank you for joining us, everybody. And thank you, Diana, for also coming on and taking some time to spend with us. So we'll dive into this. If you wouldn't mind taking a moment and share who you are, what you're doing, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, I'm so excited to be here talking about family life with you, Jason. This is something that's on our hearts, is to help families to be healthy, stay healthy, and for parents to feel equipped. Because you're talking about like parenting is challenging because you're trying to take care of you and all things you got to do and a household and a job and everything and pets and whatever. And then kids, you're raising humans. And it can be also just as rewarding. And so my name is Diana Bigham, as Jason had said. I'm in private practice in Fort Worth, Texas. I've been in private practice for over 12 years, and I specialize in working with families, and it's just on my heartbeat. So yeah, there's so many great tips that we want to give you guys that you'll walk away just knowing exactly what you can do today to get a little bit closer to your teenager.
Awesome. It's, like you said, it's a very, very, very difficult job, but I think at least for me, because I've gone through a very difficult time with my kids. It's one that knocked me off the chair for a while. And it took me a little bit of time to get back up and realize that I can, and I'm supposed to be the parent. And even, I remember as I began to think about parenting accurately, and I started to think about like, how can I market that, and how can I encourage other parents to come alongside of us and be able to offer them tools and things to help them in their journey. Even if I look at pictures, go to Google, and I Googled parenting and parenting teens, there's like literally no photos of parents with their teenagers. Parenting, it seems like it has this stigma or this idea. It's always linked to little kids. Of course, we parent, and it's parents are a huge role in a young child's life. But I believe equally as important, if not even greater of importance, is helping your children navigate through those teenage years. And I believe that you have some great insight and some tips that can really help us today in that part of the journey. So I'd love you to begin to share a little bit about that.
I think that's really interesting that you found not many pictures of parents with teens, and I never really thought about that. And so just this season of my life, I don't have teenagers right now, but I work with a lot of teenagers in my practice. And I think one of the struggles that some parents find themselves in is that parents are less cool, like they're just not cool at some point for some teenagers, and they prefer to be around their peers. And so what's happening developmentally is children have shifted into adolescence. And if you don't forget, what the goal of parenting is to raise healthy adults who are good citizens, who can contribute to society and manage life well. And so what's happening is they're preparing to be in adulthood. And so they're trying to develop, literally, if you look at child development psychology, like they're in a stage of life really trying to understand, who am I? How do I fit into this world? They're struggling with identity, and they're bombarded with so many different messages from from culture, and they have quick access. This generation has quick access to so much information, so many things vying for people's attention. And so I'm curious what sociologists would find as to why you don't see parents with their kids a lot. One, I think it'd probably be because kids prefer to be with peers for the most part.
Mhm.
Parents feel rejection. There's this language kind of circling around our practice. I think Rachel, my colleague, had coined it, but parents are respect starved. And so sometimes teenagers can be moody, and parents get offended. And unfortunately, it's true, but sometimes parents can carry resentment, and not feel cared. And so, why do I want to hang out with somebody who doesn't like me, kind of thing. And so they may have a hard time connecting with their teenager. It's also a busy season in life. You think about so many kids are signed up for lots of activities. They're in homework. They start school early, and they're in after school programs, and they're running around. You have multiple kids in the home. So much stuff is vying for our attention, even for the adult. It's easy just to grab our phones and like stick our
Uh,
faces in it, that we're ignoring the kids in our own home. And if we live like that for several years, and now we have teenagers, we've kind of grown apart. And I think this is where you come in, is helping families with letting them know, like, this is kind of a struggle that's totally like real. Like, lots of people are going through this. And so one of the things that we need to do is help families learn how to reconnect. Even with the teenage years, like, that is doable. You have to be very intentional though.
for sure. What would you say the greatest obstacle to breaking through that ice? And sometimes in meetings, we have an icebreaker, or, and especially if we've offended our teenagers, you know, like you said, they're busy. There's a lot of times there's conflicting schedules, and now with both parents generally working, or maybe you have a single parent environment, many, many things can begin to build a wall up between our kids and us. So getting through that wall, is there, a couple things that maybe stand out to you that would help us get through that initial wall that would separate us from our kids?
Yeah, I think there's probably a couple things we can keep in mind as we're trying to reconnect with our kids. Sometimes that happens, regardless of what age your child is. It's pretty easy to slip into where we've lost connection. That just happens in life sometimes, no big deal. But the way you work that out is through the heart. Sometimes we get so busy in life. I know for me, I'm a task oriented mom. And so it's very easy for me to interact with my kids through like instruction, correction, direction, and instead of being really relational. And so I think it's really important that we connect with the heart, instead of like looking at our kid thinking, you got to get homework done. Here's what you missed. Let me like be a good parent and teach you like how to make it better, which they take that as offense because we're not doing the warm, fuzzy feeling kind of activities. The other thing is not just like connecting with the heart, but you think about teenagers, like, you need to help with the chores. I'm tired from work too, but you got to help, or whatever. So
Mm.
connecting with the heart, having fun. We got to restore heart to heart connections. It's not about what I can get from my kids. It's about, let's just like chill and like let dishes go for a while, let chores go for a minute, and let's just be together. So that's really important that we measure our hearts as parents. Like, I know when I give my kids leftover version of me because I'm too stressed and not focusing on what really matters in life, then my kids are not going to want to be around me. So checking in with my heart, doing relational stuff with them, and then having really good listening skills. I can't even begin to tell you, Jason, like how many teenagers I have come into my office and they don't feel heard.
Yeah.
Now, sometimes I will say this. Some teenagers, when they say my parents aren't they don't listen to me, sometimes that actually literally directly translates to I don't get what I want, therefore they don't listen to me.
True.
So
That's
that
true.
does happen.
Mhm.
True story. And so I think it's really important that we actually do work on active listening skills. But sometimes we get offended by our kids, or we're just trying to get to the point that we need to slow down the process. And remember, I'm raising adults. Part of what I want to do is to help equip them with good decision making skills. So instead of just telling them what to do,
Right.
or fixing their problems, which we want to protect them from all the problems in life, but we
Mhm.
have to give them more wiggle room of independence, not independence apart from us, but give them a sense of independence and autonomy. Where, why do you think that friendship might not be good for you? Like, do you know what you should do about it? Would you like some ideas? Active listening skills is also like clarifying. Help me understand some more about that. Do you mean this is what happened? So you're struggling in your math and it's difficult. So those kinds of things, like paraphrasing, asking questions, listening, and conveying, like, I hear you, not like, uh-huh,
Right.
and not
Slow
like,
down.
here's your answer,
Right.
and that's hard because as a parent, I think we're very quick to want to solve our kids' problems because we love them. We want to protect them from all the problems in the world if we could.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and it's so true. Especially, I know for me, I love to fix problems. I'm a fixer, a problem solver. However, one thing I'd like to say to that I've had to struggle with and be very mindful of is that part of, even in my career, part of my job was to find problems. And
Hmm.
there was a season in my kids' life that they were not happy with me because I was always looking for problems to solve. And they even called me out on it. And it took me a little while to see what they were saying. Um, but I did. And I realized that I was looking for problems. And that's not very good either. But certainly taking the time to ask clarifying questions and really not save them as a teenager, not save them from every decision they make. When a child is younger, of course, we're protecting them and we will save them from most bad decisions. But as they get older, sometimes it's hard to let them fall.
Yeah, that's really true. And if you think about it as parents, that's our greatest struggle is the anxiety that we feel when we know we want to help fix things for them.
Right.
And we literally grieve, and we're in angst when we see them going through struggles that they don't like. I think that sometimes we have to like talk with our kids, not just for them to feel heard, for them to feel understood, but for them to understand us.
True.
Like I would be like, thank you so much, kiddo, for giving me feedback. Like you're honest kid, you're like, thank you for that. I'm so sorry. I think you're right. I think that part of my heart, kiddo, was that maybe I don't like being called kiddo, but XYZ teenager name,
Right.
fill in the blank. But that um I just want the best for you. And sometimes I get so stressed and worried that I'm quick to want to fix it. Sometimes I have that habit, will you find ways to let me know in the moment, but in a respectful way?
Right.
Yeah.
That's something to clarify too, is that there's a way to communicate. And I've had to teach my kids, like literally walk them through, like, look, you could say the same thing, but if you change the attitude, if you change the wording, and
Yes.
it's supposed to, and it could be said in a respectful way, it'll be very well received.
I
Uh,
love that because I've had some conversations with teens. I'm like, I hear what you're saying, but your strategy's all wrong.
right.
Yeah, if you want your parent to understand you, you can't come off like this way. Like
Right.
instead, try it this way. And teaching teens how to have active listening skills instead of just being rude and reactive.
Right. And I have 3 teenage girls in my house. So I have,
Bless you.
6 kids total that I'm a father to, but 3 of them are teenagers. And so
Mhm.
you can imagine the level of patience that I have,
Right.
or have not always had, but I've had to learn and grow. But I've often talked to them a lot about the way that they speak, the way that they approach me as an authority figure. Is like, look, you're going to get a job, and you're not going to be able to talk to your boss that way. If you do, you will not have a job very long. And so,
Mhm.
and part of that's preparation. I'm trying to prepare them for life. Like you said, we're raising humans,
Right.
and as parents, I think that it's very, very important that we have that we take first place in that role with social media, with all of the distractions, with everything that's going on. Now we battle because of our schedule. We are busy. Um, I've just seen it when I really decided to step up in my kid's role and break through the walls. I've seen a huge shift that's happened rapidly in my relationship with my kids.
Wow.
And that's really important, and it's very, like, it's heavy on my heart to try to help others see that they can, and to see what will happen, what's on the other side of that wall. It's your own daughter, it's your flesh and blood, the one that you saw at birth, the one that you've held crying, that you've been feeding, that they're still yours, even though they're 15, 16, 14, 12. They're still your children.
Yeah.
And and so I think there can easily be, because there's a different attitude, they become individuals. We can forget that, and frankly, it's tiring. Being a parent, being an accurate parent or an active parent, is tiring. but
Yeah.
it's so important. It's so worth it.
Yeah, we're doing very big stuff here. And part of it is if we're able to see the ROI, the
Right.
return on the investment, the value that you are not only going to get in your family as a legacy, but also you're raising people that are going to help shift culture and communities. Like there is an example, like of course, again, I don't have teens right now, but one of my daughters, she was had a rough go after school. She just kind of felt invisible, really just, was feeling kind of down at the playground after school while she was playing with other kids. And then so we talked for a brief moment and she went back and was like super confident. So I was like, yay, I did good there, mom. I'm kind of surprised what I said, what came out of my mouth too. But then literally that next day, another little girl was struggling too. And she noticed her and she didn't know who this kid was. But she came to me and she's like, Mom, can I ask her to play with me? And I'm like, absolutely. So she goes and invites the kid to play. And then we talked about it afterwards. And I was like, honey, what you did right there is called breakthrough. Like you broke through the obstacle that was keeping you stuck. You felt like unseen, unheard, unloved by your friends, and you realize that was a lie, and then you overcame it. But the things that you grow in, I mean, we're talking about deep conversations that I have with my kids, right? But
Right.
the thing that you were able to overcome, it's not just for you, but it's for other people. And I'm so proud of you that literally the very next day you helped somebody else.
Right.
And that's what it's about. It's not just about our family life being happy and peaceful. Yes, that is definitely a goal we have, but it's about impacting communities, and it starts with intentional families, one family at a time.
Yeah, for sure. And then how did your daughter feel like once she realized that she was able to make an impact in somebody else's life?
She was beaming. She
Yeah.
was completely beaming, and we were instilling identity at that moment in those conversations. Like, this is who you're designed to be,
Right.
and she just felt so proud.
Yeah. That's awesome. It's there's so many aspects to what we're talking about. And I mean, opening this box up of parenting accurately and especially trying to connect with teenagers brings a flood of thoughts and questions and things in my mind that I would like to share, and we would spend hours and hours and hours here. But trying to keep this shorter. So as we talked about earlier, um, listening skills. So there's a heart posture in listening, right? And I think that patience is one of those. And listening and patience, um, it creates an atmosphere. I feel it creates an atmosphere where you trust your children. Really, I mean, one of the goals of this is not just to be in their lives and have an influence over them, but to build that trust. And how important would you say trust is in your relationship with your teens and kids?
I think it depends on how you define trust. I was having this conversation with someone where a teen had broken a family rule, and that teen she lost trust with her parents, and when she was trying to earn back privileges, she was like, "You just don't trust me anymore." And I hear this often. And there's one perspective that I like to think about it as I try to help parents to say, don't talk about it as trust,
Hmm.
because now like the kid is like the relationship has this splinter in it, and they feel like a kid has to feel like they're in the hole and they have to work out of it in order for them to get trust. And so I just try to, like, that's really about the parents getting, you have to earn my trust again, is about like, I don't feel good as a parent, you have to do things to make me feel better. And I disagree with that posture. So I think it's really important that we don't make it about trust. We make it, I know this is probably semantics, so you guys can put in the comments whatever you want. But one of my thoughts about this is, what if we don't make it about trust?
Hmm.
Because I don't need my child to reassure my emotions. But what I'm doing here is not like trying to put in the hole where they have to earn like performance driven worth, but it's like, it's not about trust, sweetheart, or son or whatever, but it's about you not quite being ready. Let's say we had a four-wheeler and my 10-year-old knows how to drive it. Maybe we go to the country, she knows how to drive it. And now she's like, all right, mom, I'm ready to drive the car. And I'm like, no, you can't drive the car. Well, why do you not trust me? Didn't you see how I can do so good with this? It's not about trust. You're not equipped for that yet. You're not quite ready for the ramifications. So the teenager may have broken a rule. It's not because, oh, I don't trust you, you're not a good person. I don't like you. It's because you're not quite ready. I saw that you demonstrated you couldn't handle that technology, that whatever it was, in a proper way. And so you're just not quite ready, and you're not ready for the ramifications.
That's
Um,
true. Yeah.
so I think I gave you something too soon, too quick. I
Mhm.
think that there's a difference in approaching it that way.
Right. And especially with, I definitely, that's a great point and a great way to look at it. Um, I think that kids need to be able to trust us, right? As the parent, like, we
Yeah,
have
I think
to
that's very important as a
not, I mean, when, I think part of the thing that's helped me is to try to really build my rapport with them, and I mean, as parents, I think we all go through a season where we fail our kids. I mean, I've made some big mistakes. And
yeah.
so then we have to rebuild that, right? Um, in terms of like what you're saying, it's more about our relationship. And as my kids have gotten older and they've approached I mean, even preteen years, I've presented issues or presented things with them. It's like, look, really, you've done this. If I set a rule, or if I set, uh, a barrier, or um, I forget the word right now, a parameter in their life, and say, okay, this is, you can go to this point, don't go any further. A boundary, that's the word, a boundary, or a flat out plain rule, and then they disregard that, then they reap the consequence of that. I'm not the one doing it. It's just it's a response from their mis you know bad judgment or bad call, right? And
Mhm.
so I've been able to turn that and help them see that there are real consequences to actions, and it doesn't necessarily come from a mean parent.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so that's kind of helps. It's a process, and I think that's helping them begin to like be more conscious of their own decisions.
Yeah, and I think it's good too just to talk with kids. Like sometimes I blame the rules, like, well, that's just the rules. Sorry, since you broke the rule, you get the
Yeah, right.
consequence. To kind of take yourself out of it, like I'm, evil parent, coming in and just wanting to give you punishments all the time. But I think it's important just like that we have rules that are clear because sometimes kids will argue it and because they think that the rules are permeable. Now it could be that maybe my rules are antiquated. Maybe I need some feedback from my kids, maybe it's not age appropriate or something like that. So I'm willing to get feedback from my kids, but for the most part, the rules are the rules. But I think it's really important that we impart understanding for our kids, not just. I like what you're saying, like that there are consequences if you break rules. Like some are built in. Like if I touch a hot stove and I told my kid not to, I mean, if they touch a hot stove, then they'll get burned. So that's like a natural built-in consequence. I don't have to do anything. But
Right.
I think it's also important to help them understand why we have the rules, because I don't want to raise children who are just blindly obedient, because
Mhm.
some rules around them in different communities are going to be really unhealthy. And so I want my kids not just follow authority just because it's authority, but I want them to understand the reasons behind the rules, because I want to raise children who have critical thinking skills. So I'm
For
like,
sure.
hey, here's why we have that rule. Here's why you can't drive a car yet. Here's why you can't do that on the internet. Here's why so that way they have like the ability to make decisions for themselves, aka I'm raising adults. I
Right.
want to equip them with the ability to make the decisions, not always look to me to make up the rules for them, because then that's external motivation. I want my kids to be internally motivated, like they have this internal drive, they know right from wrong, and it's been placed inside of them, not just I have to always be around, because I'm not going to be alive. I'm not going to be around forever for them in the physical. And so part of it is like my time is limited, so I'm going to try to equip you the best way I can.
Yeah, that's really important. And like you said, I think that's a good point where you help them make decisions from an internal space rather than like fear of the consequences, but thinking
Mhm.
it through a little bit further instead of thinking about the initial, whatever it is that they want, but think, okay, down the road, what does this look like? Is this still going to be as good as it may be for a moment? And getting them to think further along rather than just in for the moment and living in that moment is huge.
Yeah, and that's challenging because we're kind of working against the grain, because children, the part of their brain that has impulse control,
Uh-huh.
that it's not fully developed. And so, and when especially for adolescents, their body is also being flooded with hormones, lots of changes, lots of rapid growth is happening in their brain and in their body. And so it's sometimes very challenging for them to have self-control over certain things. I'm not saying it's impossible. I think we need to set the bar, pretty high, where it's like, no, realistically, you can do this. And you're going to practice growing in self-control, but to some degree they can be impulsive because of all the changes that they're going through. And so that's another reason why this season of life, is going to be challenging for some parents.
That's for sure. So if speaking to, I mean, we have parents here from many different spots in life, in many different places in their journey as a parent. Um, if to the parents out there that have teenagers and they feel completely disconnected from them, and they decided they want to take this challenge of really engaging and building a relationship with their kids, building an influence with their teens, what would be one or two things that you could say to them or give them that would help them begin that journey?
I would say start with where they're at, like where the teen is at.
Hmm.
So if they love playing video games, then hang out with them. They'll find you annoying if they're doing multiplayer games. So don't like interrupt frequently, okay? But take an interest, and talk about it. Like that could be really hard for some parents because they're like, maybe you have no interest in it. But the reality is, like, you think about any friend, any person, whether it's a friend or it's your spouse, like when you first met someone that you really like, it didn't care what activity you did as long as you're with that person. And so
Right.
we want to have like a hard reset with connecting with our teens, say like, what is it that they're interested in? And I'm going to learn how to be interested in that too. In the early years of my marriage, I've been married for 15 years, 15 and a half years. And my husband loved golf. And I'm like, I did soccer. He had an interest in baseball, golf, football. I'm like, I'm going to take an interest in golf, even though I found it super boring. And so, and I started learning about football too and terminology. I was like, I decided one day I'm gonna just study some terminology. So I like he's gonna be surprised by this. So I'm studying this and I start talking to him about it. And I was like, aren't you proud of me? It's like I don't care about those things
Right.
personally, but I care about it because you care about it. And I think as a parent to reconnect with our teens is like what the way you connect with your kid is, well, what are they interested in now? And start talking with them where they're at. It's like when in Rome, you do as the Romans do. So sometimes, like, I don't know how people see me right now on the screen, but if you're like ahead of the game, like you're thinking about long term, long range things, you have an instant gratification kid, you can't talk to your kid from here. You have
Uh-huh.
to go to where they're at and help them come to the conclusions that you came to. And so the same is true with connecting with them. Go to where they're at, maybe expand their interests, but you can't really teach someone something if you don't have connection yet. And so do fun things, reconnect in those kinds of ways, just small kinds of stuff. Invite them to what you're doing too. If you're making a meal, like, hey, you want to help me do this? Or, make it fun and don't make it teaching. Like I think about relationships like this. I'm a very visual person. So think of my hands as person A, person B. What holds them together is a net called relationship. And truth is really weighty. And when I say truth in this instance, I'm talking about like when you're correcting them, when you're giving them instructions and wisdom in life, direction, all of that kind of stuff. That's kind of like truth. And truth is weighty. And if the net isn't strong enough to hold the weight, it'll break the relationship. And we don't want to break the bond in the relationship with kids. So be thinking about like, how do I balance like the relational aspect? So go to where your kids at. What are they interested in? And make sure you're balancing relational activity and engagement versus correction, instruction, direction. Like I was saying earlier, I'm a task-oriented mom, so sometimes I can tend to do that, but I have to be very intentional about being relational with my kids and spending that face-to-face quality time with them, doing things that are fun and engaging. So I would say start with where your kids, your teens at. What are they interested in? Invite them into things that you think would be fun for them, they'd enjoy, and be relational. So don't try to correct them or teach them, and don't feel like you have to impart all of the things that you know because your anxiety is telling you need to. Just settle in it a little bit and just enjoy their presence.
Yeah, that's awesome. So good. Well, we're nearing the end of our time. Thank you again for coming on. I want to make sure that everybody knows how to get a hold of you, and so, take a moment and please share um, more about what you're offering and how they can get a hold of you.
Yeah, so the best way to get a hold of me is through Facebook. You can follow me on my Facebook page. I actually have two different pages you can follow, but one of them is Diana Bigham, LMFT. That's my primary page. And I have a free Facebook community. And in that, we go live every single week talking about real world issues, just kind of like the ones that we were talking about today, Jason. And so that's something that you guys can get plugged into really quickly. And if you need help finding that group, just post something in the comments. We'll add the links later on.
For sure. Awesome. Well, as I was mentioned earlier in the very beginning of this broadcast, parenting accurately is fairly new, but I believe that more and more people are going to be gathering to the space every week. We're so glad that you're here, and please share, invite your friends, share the page with people that you feel could really benefit from what's happening here. Also, we do have a website, parentingaccurately.com. If you go there, I do have a free resource that I'd like to give you. It's my number one way to reconnect with your teens in 1 week. It's intense, but you could do it, and it's important. Your kids want. I believe that one thing that most parents may not be aware, that may have struggled with this, is that their teens, your kids, want you to connect with them. They want you to connect with them more than you realize. Even though they might be hurting or they might retract you or push you away, deep inside, there is a God-given heart cry for mom and dad, and they need that. So be their parent, and do not quit, do not give up. Thank you again, Diana. One last question.
Yes.
And how would you describe parenting accurately? Or what is parenting accurately to you?
Parenting accurately to me means being intentional. It means making sure that I don't miss the mark. If I plan to travel anywhere in the world, like they don't sell tickets based on where you're at. They sell tickets based on where you want to go. And so if I want to hit the mark, then I have to be intentional in all of those areas, because kids don't grow up to be healthy. They become that way. And so part of it is just making sure I hit the mark, that I am being intentional on the areas where I want my kids to be equipped in. And that's what parenting accurately is to me.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. Thank you again, everybody, for joining us, and we will see you soon.